Hello everyone, back at it again here in the shop. I was on a couple of Facebook groups and forums and a gentleman had some questions about his machine. I thought it'd be a good video to do, kind of help everyone out. So Chris, I'm gonna get this one uploaded. This one's kind of for you as you inspired it. First off, let's start out and set the record straight. I'm not a professional YouTuber. Haven't claimed to be. I shoot all my videos off of a cell phone and a $10 cell phone holder. And I don't have any video editing software yet. This right here all kind of started because I was documenting my son Jacob. He's 13. I was kind of documenting his welding adventure and he's starting to learn to weld. And then I was like, you know what? I can kind of try to help some people out along the way if I can. So if you like what you are seeing or look at some of the videos, we could definitely use the subscribers. I think we don't even have 100 subscribers yet. So hit that subscribe button, hit the bell, like it, and see if we can't help each other out. So let's get started here. So the thing was, the gentleman in the Facebook group, he got a new machine and it kind of seems like he's wanting to know what all of his buttons are doing. He's got a little project. He's got some aluminum chairs and looks like he's going to do some repair work on them. I didn't really grasp exactly what it was. He's needing to tack some stuff up on them. I imagine something's broke and needing to do some repair work. So first we're going to go over machine setting. And so for this little job in particular, with it in mind, those are aluminum chairs. So you'd have to be, well, let's start at the basics. So TIG welding, almost every single TIG welder, actually every single TIG welder that I've seen personally, and I've seen a bunch of them over the years, they can all stick weld. So that means you can, stick welding, you might be electropositive, you might be electronegative, you might stick weld AC, whatever. Well, TIG welding, it's pretty simple. You got one option. Your TIG welder needs to be set up to weld electrode negative. So that means that your work clamp or ground clamp or whatever you want to call it, that bad boy right there, this is the endo right here, it needs to be plugged into the positive side. If you plug it in the wrong one, you're going to know real quick because you're going to melt your tungsten plumb out of your TIG torch. So if you fire it up and you melt your tungsten out, you've hooked your TIG torch and you ground up wrong, more than likely. So now we got that covered. We're going to set your machine up. Your machine's different. This is a primeweld 325X. Looking at your machine, I think you're in a different country. I don't think you're in America. So some of the stuff I'm going to tell you here, you have to do the conversion on it. We don't use the metric system here. Very, very little. And me personally, very, very little. So everything I'm going to give to you in standard and you'll just have to convert it for your needs. But it'll all convert out the same. So we'll make sure, got our TIG welder set up to TIG. I got it set up for remote. I'm going to be running a foot pedal. That's what I like to run. And got it set up for AC. So now the next thing is you're going to be welding aluminum. So a good place to start out on your frequency on aluminum. I'm gonna give you good basic settings just to weld aluminum, as if you were just welding. Say you're going to weld a practice piece of aluminum, just a clean practice piece of aluminum. This is going to be basic settings first. We're going to start the basics. So my frequency, I like to run on aluminum 120 on the hertz. That's a good starting point. So what that is, that's AC jumps back and forth from positive to negative. Like here in America, it comes out the wall at 60 hertz per second. So every 1 second, it jumps from the positive side of the sine wave to the negative 60 times back and forth. I like to run it hotter up on aluminum because it helps with heat dissipation, helps with penetration, helps with burning it, helps without scorching your metal. That's where I like to run it. There's a lot of good, people argue back and forth, but I'm giving you good settings to get you started. Then on your AC balance. Now this right here can be a little tricky. There's two different ways on this. My machine reads, so here's your sine wave, here's your positive, here's your negative. My AC balance, whenever I turn the knob, I'm telling it how long I want to be in positive. Some machines, when you turn the knob, you're telling it how much you want to be in negative. So my machine, the goal is on good settings is to be 30% in the positive. So 30% in the positive. Now, some machines, to get it to where you're in 30% in the positive, you have to set it to 70 because those machines read on the negative side. So whenever you turn the AC balance knob, you're telling those machines that you want to spend 70% of the time in the negative, which is the same exact as me telling my machine 30 in the positive. If you don't know which way your machine reads, set it to 30. And if it welds fine, then your machine reads like mine. If you set it to 30 and it melts the tungsten out of the end of it, then your machine reads opposite. Set it to 70. It's not going to destroy nothing. You'll know immediately. Like, you'll know within the first few seconds, because on my machine, if I set this up here on 70, within about a second and a half, it's going to literally fry my tungsten. So I set mine at 30. Get it dialed in there. So there's 30. Then pre-flow, I like to run it about a half of a second. Post-flow, I like to run enough on it to where my tungsten's not glowing whenever I'm done welding. So if I set it to say 6 and I'm watching my tungsten after the first bead and I realize that the tungsten isn't glowing anymore and the gas ran for another 2 seconds or so afterwards, I'd dial it back down a little bit and then I'd go again. I'd back it up to probably 4.5 or 5 or something. Usually about 5 seems to be good. So just to weld straight aluminum, that's got you going. I mean, you could weld this piece of metal right here. The one thing too, so on your welding current, good rule of thumb, anything that is under, say this here's a 1/4 inch thick, 250 thousandths. So anything this thick or less, I usually run these settings on aluminum or steel at 1 amp per thousandth. So if I was going to weld this, I'd be on 225 amps because this is 225 thousandths thick. My AC frequency, I like to run it on 120. The AC balance, 30%, or like I said, 70% if your machine reads different. About a half second pre-flow, about 5 to 6 seconds post-flow. That's got you going on regular aluminum. Now, if your machine has pulse, I couldn't find your exact machine. I found the company that made yours, looked like an Australian company, made them. The one I seen, the screen was a little different, so I couldn't really tell if yours has pulse TIG or not. I'm pretty sure it does. I tried to zoom in on the pictures you posted on Facebook. But anyway, so if it's got pulse TIG, pulse is pretty simple too. So like this machine here, I got high pulse. Get it to zoom in there. And then I got low pulse. So that just sets it like pulses per second. On low pulse, my machine only go up to 10. If I go to high pulse, my machine will go all the way up to 200 pulses per second, or hertz or per second, or whatever you want to call it. It's the pulse is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about the frequency. We're talking about the pulse. So I usually I don't like running a real high pulse. I've not found a need for it yet personally. So if I'm doing pulse, it's on something really thin. It could help you on those chairs. Those chairs look like they might be really thin. And I usually run somewhere between about 2 pulses per second to 4 pulses per second. Sorry, my machine always defaults back to amps after a few seconds. So that's why it keeps going back to that 225 where we set our amp thickness like that. Or I set my amps that way for the thickness. So the other thing on pulses, there's a rule. It's called the rule of 33. So basically, you're going to set your base current at 33%. And then you're going to set your pulse duty at 33 also. And then, let's see, that should be, yep, that should have you right there. Okay. Let's see. So that's got you for pulse. Now the one thing on pulse is you have to run a higher amperage. So if I was going to weld that piece of thick aluminum, honestly, I mean, I would have to about be maxed out on my machine at 325 on the amps, because it pulses on and pulses off. So what it does whenever it hits peak, it hits it for so long, and then it bounces back off on the pulse. And that's what the base current is. That when it falls back off, it falls back down to 33% of your base current. So it'd fall back down to 33% of this, and then it would come back on full force. So like say if you was going to weld those chairs, if those chairs was, I don't know, they look thin. They look like they might be about 60 thousandths thick or something. So if you wasn't going to do it with pulse, I would just set it at 60 thousandths or 60 amps, because, you know, that's assuming they're 60 thousandths thick. I don't know what the thickness is. So I'd set it around 60 amps. I'd set my AC frequency on 120 to probably, I'd probably go higher on them. Something that thin, I usually like to get up about 180 to 200 on real thin aluminum. So we'd set it about 180 on our AC frequency. And then the AC balance, those chairs, they look kind of dirty. I mean, they look like they're not new construction. So it's going to be hard in the joints and stuff to get all that clean. So this is your cleaning effect for your aluminum. And usually on clean metal, I run it at 30% or 70 like I told you. But I would run it at 35 or 75. So depending on how your machine reads. And then I would just weld. If I wasn't going to do pulse, you'd be set. Now, if you were going to do pulse, I would probably do the pulses. I'd probably hit about 4 pulses a second. We already set our base current to 33. We set our pulse duty to 33. And then what you got to do on that, because like I said, you're not staying at the full 60 amps. You're going back to 33% of that, and then you're coming back and you're going back. Every time it pulses, it's going back and forth on the amps. So you actually need to run, if you're going to do that, probably close to 100 amps, maybe even a little more. You'll know because if you set this to 4 pulses per second and your material was 60 thousandths thick, say that number's correct, and it was 60 thousandths thick, so 60 amps with no pulse, you could melt the metal and you could go across there welding. If you did 4 pulses per second, you'd have a hard time getting your puddle to even start at 60 amps. So I'd recommend turning it up to about 100 and trying that. So, you know, add about, not quite double, about, you know, just a little less than double. And that'd get you going on the pulse. So that's kind of got everything covered, you know. Then if you're on the AC side, so we're going to do this video on AC. Another thing on them chairs, we're going to go back to the chairs. This is for a project here. So I don't know. Sorry if you've welded a bunch before. I don't know what your skill level is exactly. So we're just going to kind of go over it here. Try to get this, bear with me, I'm trying to get this camera set up. Trying to video and talk around this thing. I need someone out here to help me. So on the aluminum, you're running an inverter welder. I mean, I could tell by looking at it, it's not an old school transformer welder. So basically on aluminum, any tungsten you want to use for the most part will work. Some work better than others. Some people swear up and down by one, swear up and down by the other. Right now I got some gray tungsten, and I got some CK Worldwide, the laser tungsten. Be honest, everybody loves this tungsten, and I mean, I don't see what the big deal is about it. The gray, I think, welds just as good, or maybe a little better, and then some blue banded tungsten, it welds even better. But anyway, if you get gray, green, or blue banded tungsten, you're good. You need one style of tungsten to run aluminum, titanium, stainless, whatever. So on those chairs, I would run a 3/32 tungsten if you have it. That's 2.4 millimeters. I can help you out on that because I got a package here to tell me. Or if you have it, if it's as thin as I think it is, down around like 60 thousandths or less, I'd run 1/16 tungsten, 1.6 millimeters. Don't matter. You could run, I could run 1/8 inch here. I don't have a package, so I can't tell you what 1/8 inch is off the top of my head. But the main thing is sharpen it down. You're running an inverter, so sharpen it down to a point. And that'll give you more of a controlled arc whenever you try to weld this aluminum. Those chairs, you're going to need to clean them. So get you some acetone and get you, what I got, you need a dedicated wire brush for aluminum. So this one here is for steel. This one here I use for aluminum. I bought them 2 different sizes, and I painted my aluminum brush green so I wouldn't get them mixed up. Aluminum has to be super, super clean to weld good. That's where you're going to run into a problem if you're welding, like if you're just trying to tack back up a weld that's already broke, because it's going to be hard to get inside there and clean it. Like if there's 2 pieces of metal and you're needing to tack up that weld that broke, it's going to be hard to get down in there. So, wire brush it as much as you can. Wire brush it. Once you think you got it clean, wire brush it some more, and then get you some acetone. Now, those chairs, if they're as thin as I think they are, you might also want to consider, if you don't have any like 1/16 filler rod, you can get some aluminum MIG wire, and you can unwind this, chuck it up in a drill, unwind you a piece, 20 inches long or 30 inches long, something like that. Chuck it up in a drill, clamp the other end in a vise, and let it spin, let the drill spin it until it breaks the wire. When it does, this wire will become real rigid, and you can use it like filler metal. One thing I recommend before you do that, clean your filler wire off too with the acetone. Whenever you unspool it, before you twist it, take a rag, wipe it, clean it, clamp one end in a vise, clamp the other end in the drill, spin it until it breaks. Then it should be kind of rigid. Clip the dirty ends off where they was clamped in the drill and the vise, you'll be good to go and fill it. If you have some 1/16 filler wire, and those are as thin as I think they are, that'd be good. I got some 1/16 here. That might be something you could use for those. 3/32 probably going to be too thick. That'd be 2.4 millimeters. That's probably going to be too thick, because by the time you melt the filler wire, you're probably going to be punching holes in your chair. And I'm quite confident 1/8 inch is going to be too thick. In order to melt this 1/8 inch wire that's 3.2 millimeters, you would already burn through that thin material on the chairs. So anyone else that's watching this video, that's basically what we're going over, kind of. You want to match your tungsten size and your filler metal size to kind of your material thickness. Something you can do though, instead of buying, I got them on sale real cheap just to try them little bitty 1/16. I'll never buy any more 1/16 because this 3/32, I can grind it to a needle-like point, and I can weld something as thin as a soda can, which is the thinnest I'll ever weld, all the way up to something, 1/4 inch thick with this. That'd be 250 thousandths thick with this one. So there's no point in me having the 1/16. The 1/8 inch like this, you get up thicker than 1/4 inch, or if you're making big, huge, long welds at 1/4 inch, this right here holds up better. I just grind it to a 0.2. You could, these right here are super expensive. In all honesty, if I had plenty of money, I'd run everything on 1/8 inch. But anyway, that kind of should help you on your machine settings. Another thing to kind of help you, I did another video. I'm not familiar if anyone, Chris, you, or if anyone else stumbles across this video and you're not familiar with TIG welding at all, like I said, I don't know your skill level. You just inspired me to do this video, but if you're basically just starting out, I got some other videos on how to assemble your TIG torch properly. Go back and watch those. I got some to how to adjust your gas flow and your tungsten stick out versus your cup size. So there's some good information that we've already posted a little bit of. There'll be a lot more, and hopefully this helps everyone out. Hopefully, I was trying to think on this machine. That should have you for all your AC